Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a phenomenal show coming up, and our special guest today is Yvonne Tally. She's here to talk to us about her new book, Breaking Up with Busy. Now, Yvonne is a healthy lifestyle coach for nearly 20 years, and she's a co-founder of Poised Inc., which, among other things, offers Pilates training to cancer survivors through Stanford University Cancer Center. And she's founder of Sisterhood of the Traveling Scarves, a charity that provides headscarves to cancer patients. So let's welcome to the show, Yvonne.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, my goodness. I'm so glad we're having this discussion, and we get to share your new book, Breaking Up with Busy, which everyone needs, like, right now.
That is so true. So many of us are overscheduled and too busy. So I've seen this in my practice and in my own life, as a matter of fact.
Well, Gina, why don't we start with, how did you even discover this path for you? Because, I mean, you're on this specialized path. You're an expert at what you do. How did you even get started down this path?
Well, I began in health and wellness years ago, and it was something that I was always very interested in. If I went way back to the very beginning of it as a young flight attendant in my early 20s, just barely 20 as a matter of fact, and in those days we had to really keep a certain weight and a certain look about us. And what happened was I gained quite a bit of weight. They put me on what was called weight check, and that started me exercising. So then I became really interested in exercise and how it could enhance one's life, and then I became really interested in food and what that could do. In fact, so much so that I went ahead on to go into cooking professionally as a chef, and went to the Culinary Academy in San Francisco and went to Europe and cooked and came back and married those two, fitness and food, together from a very healthy, organic standpoint. I wanted it to be delicious, I wanted it to be vibrant, and I wanted to be able to help people using both of them. And that, in turn, led me to the attitude piece of what I call the triad of living well, if you will, fitness, food, and attitude. And the attitude piece is what I just became fascinated with. And because I discovered that if I could get behind what people were thinking, that was really what was going to make a difference in somebody's life. Not just what they were doing, but more what they were thinking that led them to doing what they were in their life. And that led me to neurolinguistic programming. So it was a combination of all those three that brought me to the work today. And about 18 years ago, I opened a fitness and lifestyle company called Poised, and started working with primarily women, 99% women, from that standpoint, the fitness, the food, the attitude. And what I found was no matter what age group, this feeling that they were always having to perform, always having to do it all, always having to race to catch up with their own life, that this is something that all women were starting to experience. And we as a culture, of course, were bringing in that status symbol of busy. If you're busy, you're better. If you're busy, you're important. And it just kind of started to erupt. And now we see it everywhere. And with the onset of technology, I'm afraid it's gotten even more easy to be busy. And it's also gotten very easy to compare ourselves with other people. And those two things together really set the ball in motion, if you will, at turbo speed.
Without a doubt. You know, I can remember in the 80s, it was like a big thing if you could multitask. That was like some of the keywords they were using back in the day. You know,
exactly.
You know,
now we found that.
Yeah,
we found that multitasking, of course, tricks the brain, confuses the brain. We actually don't get anywhere near done what we think we're getting done, and we don't do it as well, which means we have to go back and fix whatever it was that we might have missed or that might be, not suitable for our goals. So, in the 80s, it was all about multitasking. That was our secret, our secret sauce to being busy without looking like we're busy. So, it's really come full circle, and it's really entrenched itself, it being busy, into our culture on a daily basis. And it doesn't have anything to do with, affluence or having or have not. It's the idea that women particularly, and I get asked this a lot, well, you don't include men. Well, men are busy too. They're just not as busy as women. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we make 80 cents on the dollar to their dollar, so we have to work more. And we are doing the lion's share of raising our children, which means, two-thirds of working women outside of the home have school-age children. And, these are significant reasons why we're taking on more and more. We have to, most of us work now outside of the home and working inside of the home and outside of the home. And if we're working full-time inside of the home, we still are picking up more and more things that we have to get done. Again, the world is smaller. We are comparing ourselves, what we have and have not, and that sets that ball into motion again about the significance and the status of being busy.
Well, and so on that note, what are some of the key identifiers for women to go, gosh, you know what, I'm overscheduled, I'm overbooked, I need to kind of take a look at my lifestyle, make some changes?
Right. Well, I think, I give 10 signs in the book of you need to break up with busy. And I think one of the really important ones is that we frequently opt out of doing something for ourselves when a loved one requests our time. And that becomes a habit. That becomes just our fallback. Well, I was going to do, let's say I was going to go to the gym and exercise. And that all of a sudden becomes a luxury rather than something that we're doing for the well-being of our health and mental wellness. So we opt out of that to do something for someone that we love. And we also have this mixed sense of doing too much, yet not enough. Like at the end of the day, we went, what was it that I did? I just know that I was really busy. And busy becomes the new normal. It just becomes something that is very familiar with us. And at the end of the day, when our significant other asks, or our loved one asks us, how was your day? Busy. That's what it was. And we can't, again, really recall what it was that we got done. And I think one of the significant things that I see and hear a lot is just a real basic thing, and that is eating at least one meal every day standing up or while doing something else. All of a sudden it becomes sinful or not acceptable to actually sit down at a table and eat, without interruptions or without electronics around us. And we also experience other things such as weight shifts, skin issues, even hair loss, insomnia, low libido. These are things that the women I've worked with have shared with me on a regular basis. And again, it's that often that feeling of just being overwhelmed and anxious. And of course, these are the signs, like I said, that are in the book, and they can be, an example of other things that might be occurring. But I've found that with the women that I've worked with, that these are things that continually come up, that constant feeling like we're rushing just to keep up with ourselves. So, and when that happens, it's, I say it's the universe's way to get us on a different track. The universe has a couple of ways of doing it, and that is they tap us on the shoulder, or they whisper in our ear, or they, big smack alongside the head. And I would say that a lot of us know then that's when we start to pay attention, that we have to, make that change. And I know the big smack for me was ending up in the back of an ambulance thinking I was having a heart attack, but I was actually having a panic attack. And what was so ironic about that was here I was, this healthy, organic eating, fitness, mindful, positive thinking person, and here I was in the back of an ambulance having a panic attack, thinking it was a heart attack. And that was my thump on the head, and I call it my thump on the head from the universe to say, okay, we need to make some changes. And that's how I got to the book. It was a blessing, I guess. So.
Oh, without a doubt. And it's interesting that you share with us just the panic attack and, some of the main inspiration behind the book, because I've heard that from so many people where they feel like they are having a heart attack and it is a panic attack and they don't know, what to do next. It's like my life is overwhelming. I still have to do all these things. I have no idea how I'm going to make it all work.
Exactly. And if you're a type of overscheduled woman that is the perfectionist, which was my issue, then we don't tell anybody about it. there's a shame attached, an embarrassment about, I cannot be this imperfect that I have lost this control. And so we hide it. And what I found was it just was something that I exposed organically in front of about 500 people at a conference I was speaking at. And it was such a release, when you bring things out into the light, they disinfect themselves, if you will. They become clean again, so to speak. And it was a real release for me to be able to do that. And I had so many women coming up to me after that saying, oh my gosh, I've experienced the same thing. I don't know what to do about it. And at that point in my life, I was telling people, well, let's get that pattern set for you. Let's take the fitness. Let's take the food. Let's do the mindfulness. Let's start meditating. And I just started really small with those simple things. And then the mindfulness and the meditation and the spirituality really took on its own life, and that is where I am now. That's really the main work that I do at this point. But you're right, it is something that we're all affected by, some more than others. And the millennials, let's not forget the millennials, they report often these feelings of anxiousness that they're just not going to get it done. They're not showing up, they're not performing, they're not doing as much as they think they should be. So, and in the book I talk about this as women, we set an example. If we're mothers, we teach our kids how to be busy, and that becomes acceptable. It affects our relationships, the intimacy, the emotional intimacy that we have with our partners and our significant others, because if we're so busy, how can we really be genuinely connected and mindful and conscious of the experience that we're having with that person? And it also impacts our relationship with the women in our lives that are older, that we are not connecting with as much anymore. So it trickles out and flows through all relationships. And again, part of the real interest for me in this book was not only what makes people tick and also how I could help women move through this, but also let's now start to make some changes for women as a whole, that we don't do this to the generations that follow us. Let's start changing the paradigm of how we're going to model what it is that we're doing. And lighten up on ourselves. We don't have to get everything done. We can take a break. Leisure is not lazy.
Stop. Hold the presses. Wait, we don't have to get everything done? Oh,
right. What a concept, right?
Oh, my goodness, yeah. And that whole just take a break, and I mean, even myself, I've been guilty of this, where it's I'm too busy to work out, or I'm too busy to do this. And, some of the basic things that we need to maintain ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, I find, I'm glad, Marianne, that you brought up the working out, because I think that's a big part of certainly what I hear wherever I'm going, wherever I'm traveling, is how do you find time to exercise? Well, how do you just find time to cook? And that's a basic thing that we have to do every day. And again, it goes back to giving ourselves permission, which again perhaps may sound as though, so now we've got to give ourselves permission. Yes, we do. we have to collectively band together and say that personal time is important. I mean, even, if we can go back generations, even when perhaps our grandparents might have been farmers and worked the land, there was still time in the evening where people came together, and they connected. And we have lost that so much. So we go into the day busy, we end the day busy, we even sleep busy. How many times have you woken up in the middle of the night and gone through the list of things that you're supposed to be doing in your sleep? So it becomes, as I said, the new normal. It just becomes something that we do all the time. And, I'll never forget Gloria Steinem saying, you can have it all. You can't have all if you have to do all. So that's one of the things we have to remember, is that if we want it all, whatever that all might be for each of us, we have to have some help getting there. It doesn't mean that we can't do all of the time and still be happy, productive, healthy partners, parents, friends, sisters, however we define ourselves. So that was really the importance of the book.
And people who are type A personalities, they're a little bit of a control, have that control thing going on. Having someone help you sometimes can be a really tough thing to do because you're like, I don't know if they're going to do it right. I don't know if I'm going to be able to trust them to get this stuff done.
Right.
So giving up that control is huge.
Huge. It's really, really important. In the book I talk about the overscheduled woman and some of the types, and one of them, the perfectionist, and I would say the alpha, that's one of the things that's really, really hard to give up. And why is that? Why is it hard for us to give up control? Well, we have to be vulnerable. And what does that mean? That means we don't know we can't control the outcome. We don't know what to expect. And when we don't know what to expect, that can lead to feeling very anxious. So unwrapping that and taking, as I say, the whole book is about taking one step at a time. And you can open any page and breaking up and find one little nugget, if you will, and use that. And I really encourage women to use the book in that way. Instead of this whole big change that we're going to make. There's nothing more overwhelming. I'm already overscheduled. Now you want me to make all these changes? No. One thing at a time. So giving up that control, maybe that's the focus. What does that mean for me? What's going to change for me if I give up the control? And it's also about the emotions that we have attached to that outcome. If we're really attaching our own emotions to the outcome, it becomes, we can't let go of that outcome. We can't trust the process because it's just, we are emotionally attached to what may happen. So really clearing up what emotions we have attached to the outcome helps us to get to a place where we can let go a little bit. And I say, and I always tell my clients, let's start with something that that you're going to be okay with. And let's do it with somebody that is in what I call your inner circle, somebody that you can trust, that you see on a regular basis, that you love, that you have a very established, consistent relationship with, and say, hey, I need help with such and such. And as women, I think just asking for help is difficult because we are used to doing so much and doing it all and getting it done. But if we can just take that small step and let go a little bit in something small, that will help us to start to build, if you will, that mind muscle to move to bigger things that might be more important. I mean, really great leaders delegate, right? So if we can learn to delegate without putting a label on it like, well, I should be able to get this done, so I will get it done, if we can let go of that a little bit, then we can start to move in that direction of, okay, well, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough for right now. And to a perfectionist, that is not okay to hear a lot of times. But again, if we start consciously with a small change, we can get ourselves there.
And then that way, the perfectionists that are walking around out there are not all breathing in paper bags trying to figure out how they're going to do it.
Exactly. And by the way, they're using a new paper bag every single time so it doesn't look wrinkled. That's the perfectionist. Yep. That's the difference in the perfectionist, right? So it's really this idea that we have to kind of perform and show up continually in a many times, oftentimes, unrealistic way. And what does that do to us? I mean, it just depletes us, really. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned earlier, like, the differences a little bit between, like, the millennials and, like, other generations. Is there a big difference between the stress that they feel that they're under, or are they, like, the most stressed generation? I've heard some different reports on that.
Right. So most of the clients that I work with are between the ages of, I would say, 40 and 60. That's really the kind of the sweet spot for me. So a lot of the women that I work with are within that age. That doesn't mean to say I don't work with women that are younger or older. But the interesting thing about your question is that stress is stress, and how it's reported. And that's the difference. So millennials they have a feeling that they can't catch up. They have a feeling, which is what we also feel, which is that group also feels, that they can't catch up, they can't keep up with their lives. Where the millennials see this big picture in front of them, like, how am I ever going to create my life? Those in the 40s and 60s and beyond turn around and say, what did I create in my life? And all of it creates this anxiousness, and all of it creates this kind of thunder and flurry of activity to get stuff done. So and then that anxiousness is something that's really reported now with millennials so much more. We didn't talk about anxiousness when we were in our 40s or 30s or 20s, it just wasn't, a lot of us didn't even have a definition for it, but now it's very much talked about. It's come out of the shadows, and this is what a lot of millennials are reporting, that I feel anxious because I don't know if I can get it all done. How am I going to find a job? How am I going to pay off my student loans? That's a really big one, too, for their education. So these are, those are the things in their lives that they're looking at, that they're feeling anxious about, and that they're feeling worried about. Where you take someone who might be in their 30s and 40s, that they're building a career, that they're perhaps building a family, and they're also feeling, am I going to get done what I set out to do? Am I at the place that I thought I would be? Again, stressed out, anxious, tired, multitasking our way through things that aren't getting done, and it leads to, as I said earlier, a lot of different negative effects, such as health considerations and relationship difficulties, and we have to back off of that a little bit and try to be a good parent, not the best parent, be a loving partner, not the perfect partner, be an excellent professional that's striving to be successful in our career, but not be the top dog that's always getting things done every single time. A lot of competition, because we see it more.
It is. Now, is that different? I know we've talked about some of the ages. Does it differ in regards to different races as well, or genders?
Well, I don't have a lot of statistics on that. However, the difference is that women, because that's what I really deal with, women have the sense that they should be doing it all and getting it all done, where men have a tendency to delegate more, ask for assistance, and have no problem going to the gym, have no problem getting to the golf course. And that's a big generalization that I'm making, obviously, because there's the same story on either side of the coin for men and women. But generally speaking, they manage their time differently than we do. And I read a recent report that they take something like 2 extra hours of leisure a week, where we don't give ourselves permission to. I know. Good for them. Good for them. They can have, hand them the kids or the grocery list or the mechanics of something to do as they're walking out the door. And I don't want it to be kind of this sexist thing or an exclusion thing at all. It's really about each, the genders helping one another, if you will, being partnership in this. And men will learn a lot by recognizing that this is not a complaint. This is not a it is somewhat of a dissatisfying feeling not to have any assistance or to feel like you're constantly trying to keep up, but that we can all learn from one another. We can learn from men that it is absolutely okay to spend time with friends and take leisure time, and it's not something that needs to be frowned upon. And I think as women as a group, we need to give ourselves permission to do that. I want to start this group called the LOLs, Ladies of Leisure, because I think it's so important to take a day during the week or a moment during the day or sometime during the month to come together with your friends where you don't have an agenda, where it's just a time to be with one another and fill one another up. It's leisure. It's important that we have that in our lives. It's healing. It's a way to improve our health and our mental wellness. So.
Well, there's definitely something we can learn there. If men have no problem delegating in general, have no problem delegating and taking a little extra time, that really shows us that there's something that we can learn from doing that. And by letting go and being okay with the outcome, we'll be able to have that flexibility that we're really desiring.
Yes, and I think also we have to remember that men, traditionally have had more, quote, experience with that as well, if we look at how our country has been built and how cultures are built. So, and it's worked really well for a long time, and now we're seeing that it doesn't work well. We need to have equality in all areas, and we need to have an acceptance in all areas that lessening the load, sharing the load is important for all of us. And, again, in the book, I give a lot of solutions, practical, mindful solutions, and ways to keep yourself out of the busy race And it's a real kind of a map for doing that, one step at a time. But as I said, there's this underlying ethos that women said they can have it all, so they'll get it all, and then all of a sudden we forgot the most important part, and that was, oh, by the way, I'm not sure I want all that after all. And if I am going to have it, I'm going to need some help, and I'm going to have to ask for that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think we have to get rid of the idea that when we ask for help, it doesn't mean we're weak. It actually means that we're going to be stronger because of it. Vulnerability is a very strong way to allow ourselves to grow and expand and to connect. So it's uncomfortable, especially if you're not comfortable with asking. So it's something I would say, if something is uncomfortable, move towards it. Of course, there's caveats to that as long as you're safe. But if something's uncomfortable for us to do, that's usually a signal that that's something that we can move toward, that we should move towards or can move. I don't like to use the word should because there's so many shoulds in the world that are presented to us day in, day out. But it's something that we can move towards and explore further. And typically, if we move through that, we become stronger on the other side.
Well, and I love how you talked about a little bit ago, in regards to also what it is that we are mirroring to the next generation. Because we don't want to teach these habits of being overbusy and being stressed to our children and their grandchildren and what have you.
Yeah, and it's that imbalance between obligation and expectation, and then that lack of personal replenishment that leaves many of us feeling like we can't get caught up. And that's something, that feeling, when our kids, I remember my mother, she raised 6 kids on her own. I don't know how she did it. I raised one. I kept looking around for assistance. I mean, she raised 6 kids on her own, but she had a system. And she had no problem in making sure that things were done and the load was shared. But I do remember that she never stopped. And I remember later on, years later, after I had my daughter, and I'd say, come on, Mom, just sit down and relax. And she finally was at a point in her life where she could sit down and not feel like she was rushing all of the time. And I asked her one day, I said, I don't remember you ever doing this when you were growing up. She goes, where do you think I was supposed to find the time to sit down and relax? I was too busy trying to get the meals on the table and make sure all of you kids were where you were supposed to be. So, again, and I learned really well how to be busy, and I did the same thing. So it's a really open conversation that I have with my own millennial daughter that, personal wellness is important. It's the one way that you're going to continue to grow and keep strong. And so she's learned that, but go ahead.
Oh, that's so funny because I have a friend that does the same thing. I have a friend, she never stops. She's so thin because she runs around so much.
It's true.
Sit. It's like, you could tell it's just killing her to do it,
Yeah. And for some people are just, they're wired to move. My business partner is like that. My business partner will be 81 in 2 months, and I've never met anybody that goes the way that she goes. And she loves it. It's the way that she's wired. But what she does is she takes time to replenish. So she does take days off that are completely absent of work and noise and anything else. So she's found that, that balance. But for her, generally speaking, she's a go-go. She just gets up and goes. And where I'm the other person where I will go, but then I also need that space of time each day where I'm in a quiet space, I spend time meditating, and that's how my body functions. That's how I function well, is to have that place in my day where that can happen. But again, I had to give myself permission for that. I had to end up in a very expensive ambulance ride, which I call the Uber of all Ubers, and figure out that, this wasn't working. So,
Because, it's so easy to get into that trap, and then I have another dear friend, he's always telling me, well, I'm just so busy, I'm just going, and it makes me anxious just hearing it sometimes.
Yes, exactly. You see that anxiousness, when we look at other, it's hard to relax around somebody that's always up, down, in, out, and it's but for other people, for instance, I visited my daughter's office, and everything is open. There's 50 people and everything is open. And I said, how do you concentrate? She goes, what do you mean? I said, how do you focus with all the noise? She goes, what noise? I mean, they're just wired differently. It's something that they've been, experiencing their whole life. As far as they work in cafes where there's, the noise around them. In their offices, things are very open. It's this collective, collaborative type of environment where my generation, everybody had an office, or they had the quiet space rule within that office. So it's just different, and we get used to what we're familiar with, and that's how we establish the habits, and that's how we get to a space where we use habits that aren't good for us or that are not resourceful. So it's just, it all depends on what we're trained to do, what we're familiar with, and what we continue to make happen in our own life on a daily basis.
Well, and I know in your book,
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And there's a portion in your book you talk about spiritual solutions, and then so when we look at breaking up with busy, how can there be a spiritual component?
I think that's thank you for that question, because I find that in connecting with, at least for me, my inner voice, my intuition, it is a powerful tool for gaining clarity, igniting my own inspiration, and also for relieving tension and mindfully attuning to positive aspects of any situation. And we may call it spirituality, religion, or universal energy, but a belief and a faith in something beyond ourselves can, at least I believe, can open up our mind and our heart to living a life with more kindness, with more love and compassion and empathy. And when we can come from that place, we expand our capabilities to see things through a different lens, one that may offer answers and solutions that we might have missed when we turn away from listening to the voice of our heart, which is what I call spirituality. So it is another, if you will, another tool that I use to gain insight and perspective and direction. And that belief that there's something beyond ourselves, that we're not alone, that we're connected, that a greater source amongst us, around us, through us, however we want to relate it, part of a soulful connection, whatever our words are. But it's the basis of belief that that there's something beyond us, and that we're connected to something that can be powerfully influencing in our lives. And that, if we have that is another tool to help us stay centered. So when the difficulties show up, we're met with the surprise of the day, and we throw our arms up and we say, "You're kidding, now what am I going to do?" type of a reaction. If we pause, and I talk about this, pause, imagining that big pause button, hit that pause button, take a few deep breaths, and the trust in the uncertainty that there is going to be a source beyond my own personal attributes, beyond my own practical solutions, that there's a source that is going to be present. The energy, if you will, the energy that we create is what we connect and what we draw to and what we attract. So if we're in a mindful space and we're in a spirited space, in a soulful place, we're going to attract, I believe the same.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt. Well, and it really puts things in perspective when we look at any kind of path that we're walking with that spiritual aspect, because it really, we're able to look at the bigger picture as opposed to sometimes getting kind of stuck in the minutia.
Yeah, I love that you said looking at the bigger picture. Yes, it is about the big picture, because we can get stuck in those little tiny details. It's like trying to get a knot out of a shoe. If we're just really focused on getting that knot out of the shoe and we get deep into it, we start pulling on the strings that are creating the knot tighter. It's the backing up. Yeah. It's the bigger view that we can, and because we open our perspective. I always say it's like standing on a beautiful sandy knoll overlooking an ocean, where you get the broad view of the ocean and the sand and the sunset. But if you're right at the water's edge, you're not going to see as much. So packing up and getting our big picture, and then allowing what I call the tools. The tools, the practical solutions, the mindful path, the spirited or spiritual path or solutions. All of those work together really well. And I'm all about any tools that I can get that are organic and can produce resourceful outcomes and goals and desires and making a vibrant lifestyle. I am open to that, and I will try that, because I think it's, we have so much within us that we have only tapped. And if we're open, as you said, to the spiritual aspect of it, that's another strength, another source that we can be connected with. And I don't know about you, but in difficult times, in difficult loss, in times of feeling fearful or alone, if we have that spiritual connection or that belief or that source connection, we know it's going to be okay. And think about what that does to us on a human level. It changes our whole brain chemistry, reduces our cortisol, increases our dopamine. We can think more clearly. Our prefrontal cortex says, oh, okay, I can start to now look for solutions. I can start to creatively think. But when we're fearful and afraid and we don't feel as though there's any solutions or any help out there, so to speak, we get anxious. We feel stressful. We feel isolated. And what does that do to us? What does that do to us on a health level and a mindful level? So it just, all aspects connect, so to speak. The human quality, the spiritual quality, the earth elements, all of those, I believe, connect in creating what I call a vibrant life. And I think it's energy, and it expands out and around us, and we connect with other energy the same, and we're able to share that. And that's when we teach our younger generations how to do that, and that's how we connect deeper with our older generations as well, and with one another.
And which is exactly what we want to be doing, is connecting more with people instead of these devices,
Yes, I have this thing I call the the elevator challenge. Have you ever noticed when you get into an elevator, everybody looks down and becomes quiet, and now everybody looks down at their phone? So I decided that every time I get in an elevator, I'm going to speak to the person in the elevator, especially if it's just one other person. And I always look at them now and I say, how's your day going? And I mean it genuinely, too. It's not just a kind of a test type of thing. And instead of saying, how are you, or what are you up to, how's your day going? And I love the reaction. The door opens, and we're both happier, because the reaction is typically surprise. Never have I had anybody look at me as though to say, don't bug me. It's always surprise, and there's an answer, and then there's a short exchange, there's a smile, the door opens, and there's a lifted feeling of lightness, so to speak. That's one little tiny thing that we can do to connect. And we feel better. It's like helping somebody,
By far. And, it's interesting when we make these personal connections, we never know, where people are so attached to their devices and their phones, we never know if people are actually making connections throughout their day. That might be the only connection they make.
Yes, and now that's what's interesting about the millennials, is that's how they do connect, is in that space, that little 3-inch space. And so when we say, I'm taking the phones away from my kids, or I'm closing down their computer, that's cutting their life off, so to speak. That would have been like when I was a teenager, if my mother said, you're grounded and don't even think about taking the car. Well, I couldn't anyway. She used to get the phone, right? And your whole life stops. So this is how they connect. And, there's positives and negatives to it. I'm actually doing some research on that now, because I find it so fascinating. Is all social media bad? I don't think so. I do think it's going to be like anything, though, that we have to have a balance between the two. I know that running my own business for the last 18 years, the one thing that sets us apart is our ability to connect with the client. It's a customer service relationship, rather than just having everything automated online. That's what works well for our business. Other businesses are going to work well having everything automated, but we find that the relationship, we always say we're not selling lifestyle, we're not selling Pilates, we're not selling fitness. We are sharing a relationship with clients. And we found it to be very successful for us. Other businesses may not. What I have found when I interview, not all, but frequently, millennials, is the inability to connect on that eye-to-eye personal level. So as parents and teachers and educators, it's really important that we share that life skill with them, that we teach them that life skill, because it's not all social media and it's not all personal connection. It's a balance of the two, because we're not going to get rid of social media or electronics. They're here to stay. They'll be here long after we're gone.
Without a doubt. and a lot of us, I mean, they're great tools when we use them as tools. Yeah, but when it takes over our life, then we need to kind of reconsider what's going on.
Right, exactly. I couldn't agree more. And again, it's that balance. How do we find that balance? And how do we create kind of the boundaries? You know, because boundaries aren't designed to keep people out. They're designed to protect our space, and so that we can flourish and we can be healthy and grow. So how do we develop those good boundaries for ourselves, for the people that we share our lives with, so that we can become, as I said earlier, better, stronger people? And I mean stronger as far as emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you know, working from a place of kindness and compassion rather than, you know, having the defense mechanisms always up. So, yeah, it's finding that balance, and I think it's extremely challenging in today's culture to, well, for example, when you go out to a restaurant, you see two people. 9 times out of 10, they're going to have the devices on the table, and they're going to be connecting with that big, you know, kind of shadow in front of each of them, and that's their electronics. That's what they know, that's how they connect, and that's a way of being. I'm not saying it's wrong. What I'm saying is that let's find a balance to that. We have to have some time that we come in and we connect organically without the devices, so to speak. And I'm not sure how we can do that for anybody except ourselves.
Well, and one little tip I use with my friends and I do this, that, you know, we kind of put our phones stacked up, and whoever picks up their phone first buys dinner for the entire table.
I love that. That is a great little solution. I love that. We have a policy in our business, in our studio, that if somebody's phone goes off, they have to put $1 in a dollar bucket. Of course, we never had a dollar bucket. We always give the $1 back. But it's the idea that they'll have to put $1 in the dollar bucket. And it gets them into the mindset where, okay, that's right, I get to turn off my phone. So in the beginning it was, I have to turn off my phone. Now they come in and I get to turn off my phone. So it's, again, it's a bit of balancing act, I think, when we're used to having something always present all of the time.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, we talked about the spiritual aspect. I kind of want to touch on this just a little bit more. And what's interesting, a lot of times people, when they start getting into mindfulness practice, they think that it has to do with religion in any sense of the word. It's just a practice for their mind to kind of control what it is that they are focusing on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mindfulness is just, you know, mindfulness and spirituality kind of, in my belief, go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So mindfulness is the conscious, present position of being in a present of your surroundings, your bodily functions, any sensations. It's being in that moment. And spirituality, I think, goes very, very much hand in hand with that, because when you are in that place of being in the moment, that's when you can really, as I say, not only listen to your heart, but to open up to what your spiritual connection is, what it means to you in your life. And it's it's very individual for each person. And again, it's having that mindset that there's help out there, that you're not alone, that there's a greater source that can guide you. And I think it's hugely powerful to have that, as far as using it as a tool or using it as a source of anything, wellness, love, compassion, connection, whatever that might be.
Yeah, whatever that is for them. Because I know it's used across so many different like healing techniques and different coaching programs. It's such a huge resource. I just wanted to touch on that for a little bit.
Yes, and in fact, it was really interesting when I started doing corporate meditation, where I go into corporations and businesses, and I work with the staff, even the executive groups, all across the, no matter what position they're in. And when I first started doing it, I was very careful not to be too spiritual, just to be mindfully stress-reducing based, mindfully based meditation. That was it. And I was very focused on not going anywhere in the spiritual realm, and it became really difficult for me because it didn't feel right for me, and I felt like I was keeping from them what they could experience even more in a deeper meditation. And now, fast forward several years later, I don't worry about that. I present it slowly. I let them grow into it. And if they find that it's not something that they can connect with or that works for them, then they don't end up coming back. But what I've found is that the groups continue to grow. And I believe that it's because after, asking them, why do you come, what is it about that, or them telling me why they're there, it's that they're able to quiet the external noise, come from within, and begin to trust their own inner voice, their intuition, their what they call their center, rather than all the doing of what is going on outside of them. So they begin to use it as a real place to find a sense of balance, if you will. And now I just go for broke. We go way into it. I mean, it's okay. And I talk about energy, and I talk about how that is connected and how you can create it, and yeah, it's very powerful.
Oh, and it really makes a difference in your everyday life when you have that practice going on. Well, I think I have time for one more question here. What do you hope the readers take away from Breaking Up with Busy?
I hope that the readers discover a clear path to living the life they desire. It's not out of reach. And I hope that they take away the practical solutions for making the daily shifts, because those are important. And I hope that they learn to connect and listen to their spiritual voice. I want them to feel confident and to know that they can transform their needs and their wants into their own reality. The Breaking Up with Busy is about mindful intentions, clear and thoughtful communication, healthy boundaries, and a big dose of love and compassion for one another. That's what I hope they take away, and I hope they find that they can be who they are without being everything to everyone else, and that it's okay to lighten up and take time. It's important. It's necessary, not only for ourselves, but for, as we talked earlier, about the generations that come before us and after us. I remember I'll just finish up with this real quickly, and I remember I was talking to my daughter, Juliet, and about time and how important it was, and how people feel so strapped with it. And she said to me, she goes, you can't make time, Mom. It's not like you can go out and find it in a bush or times, somewhere hiding. She said, you got to plan time. That's the way that we can make our lives different, is by planning to make time. So I ask everyone, plan to make the time to make your life the life that is meaningful to you. Plan it. Because it's just like anything else. If you plan it, you'll focus on it, you'll put the energy in that direction, you'll open your mind space and your heart space, and things will start to happen.
Well, and that's when you make plans for doing something, it's not wishful thinking, it's not someday I'll be able to have more time to spend with my family, or time to work out, or time to walk the dog, whatever it is. It's something that you're doing. It is a action word. It's more getting into action about your life.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I think when we put together the mindset first, coupled with the action, that's when we're most in sync. That's when we're really in the flow of things. And taking the time to really discover, as we do in Breaking Up with Busy, to discover, what's the root of what's the root of what I'm doing that's stalling me, and what's the root of what I'm doing that's inspiring me. Both those questions need to be answered, because then we know what we can plan, what we can pattern after if we know what's really inspiring us and what's moving us forward. And if we identify what's holding us back and holding us down, we can eliminate that pretty easily because there's, over several ways to do that in that book. That's for sure. Practical and spiritual.
It is very practical. I loved your book, Breaking Up with Busy, and highly suggest our listeners pick up their own copy. Yvonne, where can people connect with you and be part of your community?
Oh, thank you for asking. They can go to YvonneTally.com, and that will give them all my resources there that they can connect with me right there in that space.
Well, I'm part of your community. I highly suggest everyone do the same. Yvonne, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
We're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.